The cold fluorescent lights of the Manhattan maternity ward hummed softly as Madeline Carter lay weak against the pillows, her breathing still unsteady from the ordeal of delivering 3 tiny lives into the world. Nurses moved gently around her, adjusting blankets, checking monitors, whispering congratulations she barely heard. All she could focus on were the 3 small bracelets, lined neatly on the bassinet. Baby A, Baby B, Baby C, her whole heart wrapped in pink and blue plastic. The door slid open, and for a heartbeat, Madeline thought it was another nurse. But the sharp scent of Grant Sullivan's cologne, expensive, metallic, unmistakable, cut through the room like a blade. He stepped inside without smiling, dressed not like a new father but like a man walking out of a boardroom, his crisp jacket spotless, his tie perfectly knotted. He didn't touch her. He didn't look at the babies. His eyes were cold, impatient, almost irritated. "Grant," she whispered, her throat dry. Are you not going to see them?" He didn't answer. Instead, he set a leather folder on the rolling tray beside her bed. His Montblanc pen clicked sharply, far too loud in the quiet room. "I need you to sign these," he said. "No softness, no hesitation. Tonight." Madeline blinked, confused. "Sign what? I just gave birth." "Exactly," he said, voice flat. "Which makes this easier. We're done, Madeline. I'm filing for divorce." She thought she misheard. Thought maybe the medication blurred her senses. But the words hit her again, cold, heavy, final. Her chest tightened. "Divorce? Now? Why would you?" Grant didn't flinch. "I can't raise 3 kids. I won't. And I'm not tying my life to someone who can't keep up anymore." Her vision blurred. Not from tears, those would come later, but from shock so deep it felt like her soul cracked. The man she built a home with, the man she trusted with her dreams, was walking away minutes after their children took their first breaths. Outside in the hallway, a nurse paused, sensing the tension. She glanced through the small window on the door, just as Grant leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Sign them, Madeline. You have nothing without me, and you know it." Madeline's fingers trembled against the sheets as she stared at the papers inches from her newborn's bracelets. And then behind Grant, the door handle moved. Someone else was about to walk in. The person pushing the door open wasn't another doctor. It was Nurse Helena, the senior NICU nurse, with 30 years of calm behind her steady gaze. She paused in the doorway, taking in the icy tension, the divorce papers on the tray, and the way Madeline's knuckles were turning white as she gripped the bedsheet. Helena's eyes flicked to the babies through the glass pane in the adjoining NICU room, then back to Madeline, and something protective hardened in her expression. "Mr. Sullivan," she said gently but firmly, "your wife needs rest. The babies are stable, but her vitals aren't. I'll need a few minutes alone with her." Grant straightened, as if she had interrupted an important meeting. "This is private," he snapped. "No," Helena replied, voice low and unshakable. "This is medical. If you ever cinch." Madeline had never been more grateful for a stranger. With a frustrated exhale, Grant rolled his eyes and stepped back. "Fine. 5 minutes." He left the papers on the tray and strode out, his expensive shoes tapping sharply down the hallway. As the door closed, Madeline's breath hitched. She didn't cry, she didn't even have the strength, but her entire body shook. The hurt wasn't just emotional, it was physical, deep, a hollow ache spreading under her ribs. Helena sat beside her, placing a warm hand on her wrist. "Sweetheart," she murmured, "no woman should be handed divorce papers minutes after giving birth." Madeline opened her mouth, but no sound came out. All she could do was stare at the NICU door where nurses were gently tending to her babies. 3 tiny miracles. 3 tiny reasons she thought Grant would soften. Instead, he hardened. "He said I have nothing without him," Madeline whispered finally, her voice cracking. Helena frowned. "People like him say things they think are true. Doesn't make them facts." Madeline's eyes drifted toward the glass, watching the faint rise and fall of her newborn's chests. Small, fragile, fighting to stay warm. Meanwhile, the man who should have been their protector was already planning his exit. A soft knock interrupted them. A young nurse poked her head inward. "Mrs. Carter, they're ready for you in the NICU if you want skin-to-skin time." Madeline's breath steadied a little. "Yes, please." Helena helped her into the wheelchair, moving slowly to avoid the soreness in her abdomen. The hallway was quiet except for the distant beeping of equipment and the muted steps of night shift staff. When they reached the NICU, Madeline's heart clenched. Her babies looked impossibly small, wrapped in soft blankets, surrounded by warm lights and gentle monitors. A nurse carefully placed baby A against her chest. The tiny body relaxed instantly. Madeline exhaled, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. But the moment of peace didn't last. From across the room, through the glass wall, she saw a familiar silhouette, Grant leaning against the hallway window, on his phone. His posture changed, his head tilting, his lips curling into a smile she hadn't seen in months. And then the worst part, he whispered, "I'm here, babe. Just finishing this mess." The nurse closest to Madeline paused mid-charting. She had heard it too. Madeline's stomach twisted. That tone, soft, flirtatious, intimate, wasn't for her. It hadn't been for a long time. Helena's voice hovered behind her. "You deserve better than a man who celebrates your pain." Madeline held her baby a little tighter, breathing through the hurt. She didn't know yet that Grant's phone call wasn't the most painful truth waiting to be uncovered tonight. Because in less than an hour, someone unexpected would arrive at the hospital, and they would change everything. Grant Sullivan's footsteps echoed down the polished corridor, each tap a reminder that he wasn't here as a new father, he was here as a man calculating his next move. After ending the call with that soft, flirtatious tone, he tucked his iPhone into his jacket with the same ease a man might close a business deal. The glow from the hallway windows painted sharp lines on his face, highlighting the cold ambition carved into every feature. He didn't bother looking back at the NICU. He didn't want to see Madeline holding their child, didn't want to face the truth that real responsibility now existed outside his control. Instead, he headed straight for the private waiting lounge reserved for hospital VIPs. Inside, his assistant, Tyler, was already standing beside the sleek glass table, clutching a stack of folders and a silver laptop. "Sir," Tyler said, adjusting his tie nervously. "The PR team is on standby. They want confirmation about the statement." Grant loosened his cufflinks, exhaling with annoyance. "Tell them we proceed. The narrative is, irreconcilable differences worsened by high-risk pregnancy stress. Keep it clean, keep it quiet, make her look unstable, but gently." Tyler swallowed hard. "Madeline just gave birth to triplets, sir. Public sentiment doesn't build empires," Grant snapped. "Control does." "Thanks for watching." He grabbed a bottle of sparkling water from the minibar, twisting it open sharply. This was the Grant everyone in the corporate world feared, the version who wore ruthlessness like a tailored suit. "And Ava?" Tyler asked carefully. "She's asking if she should delete the stories or—" "No," Grant said. "She can keep posting. I want her visible. It'll push Madeline to sign faster." Tyler hesitated. "Sir, Ava is 23. People may assume she looks good on my arm," Grant interrupted coldly. "That's all that matters." He waved Tyler away, signaling the conversation was over. The assistant rushed out, leaving Grant alone under the soft recessed lights. He checked his reflection in the dark window, hair perfect, posture effortless, expression unreadable. This was the image he worshipped. A powerful CEO who made hard decisions without blinking. Never mind that his children were fighting to stabilize just a few rooms away. He didn't believe in fatherhood. He believed in control. Meanwhile, in the NICU, Madeline was holding baby B when a shadow appeared at the door again, not Grant's, but the nurse who had overheard his phone call earlier. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Mrs. Carter. I don't mean to intrude, but your husband." He spoke to someone, very intimately. Madeline nodded faintly. She had suspected. But hearing it confirmed still cut deeper than she expected. The nurse hesitated. "Men like him think vulnerability is weakness. They don't understand that mothers become stronger after nights like this." Madeline's throat tightened, the truth settling inside her like a quiet fire. Back in the lounge, Grant received another text. The screen lit up with Ava's name beside a photo, her in a sleek red dress, lips pursed, captioned, "Miss you already." He smirked. He didn't know someone else had walked into the hospital's main entrance just minutes earlier. A woman in a tailored coat, holding a leather briefcase embossed with a subtle gold initial, E.W. Eleanor Whitford. The family attorney, and the last person Grant wanted to see. Because Eleanor wasn't here for him. She was here for Madeline. Eleanor Whitford didn't rush when she entered the hospital. She never rushed. Power rarely needed to. Her heels clicked in an even rhythm on the gleaming floor as she moved past the reception desk, the soft light reflecting off her tailored charcoal coat. At 52, Eleanor carried herself with the kind of elegance only old money or long-earned authority could shape, and in her leather briefcase rested documents that would flip Grant Sullivan's perfect world upside down. The receptionist straightened immediately. "Miss Whitford, welcome. Are you here for Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," Eleanor replied gently, "and I need access to the maternity wing." The nurse typed quickly, then nodded. "She's in NICU 3. Let me call ahead." "That won't be necessary." Eleanor's tone was polite, but final. "This is family business." And it. She walked down the corridor, her eyes sharp, absorbing every detail. The folded divorce papers left on a rolling tray near the hall, the shaken nurse who whispered to another, and the unmistakable scent of expensive cologne still lingering in the air. Grant's signature fragrance. Eleanor's jaw tightened. That man never knew when he was burning the wrong bridge. When she reached the NICU doors, she paused, watching through the glass. Madeline sat in a recliner, her shoulders hunched, her face pale and exhausted, baby B resting against her chest. A nurse adjusted the wires softly, as though afraid the mother might break if touched too roughly. Eleanor's gaze softened. She had known Madeline's parents, good people, painfully careful with their daughter's well-being. They had built protections around her, legal safeties, trusts, contingencies for the day life would test her, and that day had clearly arrived. She stepped inside. Madeline looked up, startled. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" The older woman approached slowly, brushing back a strand of hair from Madeline's damp forehead. "Your mother made me promise that when your life reached a moment you couldn't face alone, I would come find you." Madeline blinked hard, trying to hold herself together. "I can't do this right now. Grant, he's trying to." "I know," Eleanor said softly. "I saw the papers. Thanks for watching." Something broke in Madeline's expression, then not weakness, but the painful shock of being seen, truly seen, after hours of being discarded like she didn't matter. "I don't have anything," Madeline whispered. He said this house, the land, everything is his. He said, "I'll walk away with nothing." Eleanor gave a single, almost compassionate smile. "Madeline, that is the first of many lies he's told you." Madeline stiffened. "What do you mean?" Eleanor opened her briefcase. Inside were thick folders, embossed seals, and a decades-old signature Madeline recognized her mother's. "Before your parents passed, they placed the Carter estate and all its properties into a generational trust. You, my dear, are the sole beneficiary. Not Grant. Never Grant." Madeline stared, breath caught between disbelief and dawning hope. "You're saying—" Her voice trembled. "The mansion, the land, all of it. Yours," Eleanor finished. "Every acre, every brick." The NICU nurse nearby froze mid-step, stunned. Madeline pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. "Grant doesn't know." "No," Eleanor said, eyes narrowing. "And men like him make very dangerous mistakes when they think a woman has nothing to lose." Just then, footsteps approached quickly from the hallway, loud, impatient, entitled. Grant's voice followed, sharp and irritated. "Where is she? I'm not done." Eleanor's expression didn't change, but her eyes glinted. She turned toward the door, ready for war. Grant hadn't even reached the NICU doors before the temperature in the hallway shifted. Eleanor Whitford stood squarely between him and the room, her posture calm but immovable, like marble carved with purpose. Grant stopped short, irritation flashing across his face. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Eleanor smiled politely, the kind of smile that always unsettled men like him. "Good evening, Grant. I believe you and I have overdue business." "And was?" Grant scoffed. "I don't do business in hospitals." "No," Eleanor said, "you do divorces in hospitals." The jab pierced, and Grant's jaw tightened. "Move. I need to speak with my wife." Eleanor didn't budge. "You mean the woman you blindsided while she could barely keep her eyes open? The mother of your 3 newborn children?" Grant's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "This is none of your concern." "Oh, but it is," Eleanor replied. "More than you understand. It's Tomagay." Before he could respond, the NICU doors opened, and a nurse wheeled Madeline out carefully. Her face was pale, but her eyes, still red, still exhausted, held a new spark of awareness. Baby A lay against her chest, tiny breaths warming her gown. Grant stepped forward as if nothing had happened. "Madeline, we need to finish signing those documents. The sooner we end this cleanly, the better it is for everyone." Everyone. As if she were a problem to eliminate, not a wife of 4 years or the mother of his children. Madeline swallowed hard. "I can't talk about this now." "You don't have a choice," he said. Eleanor stepped in. "Actually, she has every choice." She opened her briefcase and removed a folder embossed with the Carter family seal. "Grant, I assume you never bothered to read the terms of the prenup? Or the trust documents?" Grant stared at the seal as if seeing it for the first time. "What is this supposed to be?" "Your wake-up call." She handed him a copy of the trust summary. Grant flipped the first page, then the second, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion, then to something colder, something almost panicked. "What is this?" he demanded. This says the mansion is part of." "No, that's not possible." "It's entirely possible," Eleanor replied. "The Carter estate, including the land surrounding the mansion, the guest house, the gardens, the private lake, and the architectural rights attached to all structures, is not marital property. It belongs solely to Madeline." Grant's face drained of color. Eleanor continued, voice razor-sharp. "Your mother-in-law placed it in trust before you even met her daughter. You married into privilege, Grant, not ownership. A very big difference." Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You expect me to believe she owns all of it? The land, the mansion?" "The acreage is 146 acres, Eleanor said calmly. "Her parents built generational wealth, not a decorative home." Madeline, clutching the baby, spoke softly. "Grant, you told me I'd walk away with nothing. That's because you were supposed to." His voice cracked with the first hint of panic. "This changes nothing. I'm still the one providing. You're still the man who left divorce papers on a hospital tray." Eleanor interrupted. "And now you'll face the consequences." A nurse pushing a cart slowed down, pretending not to listen, but everyone felt the tension. Grant's eyes darkened, his composure slipping. "You think you can take my company? My future? I built everything I have." Eleanor narrowed her gaze. "You built nothing you weren't willing to destroy." Grant took a step forward, voice rough. "Madeline, we need to talk alone." Madeline held her baby tighter. Eleanor gently moved between them again. "You will speak to her when she's ready," she said. And not a second sooner. Grant froze because behind him, someone else had appeared in the hallway. A man in a tailored black coat. Someone Grant absolutely didn't expect. Someone who knew the Carter Trust even better than Eleanor. The man in the tailored black coat stepped forward, his presence quiet but commanding. Daniel Hayes, private estate attorney, longtime advisor to the Carter family, and the only person besides Eleanor who held full knowledge of the generational trust. His dark hair was dusted with snowflakes, his expression calm, but his eyes locked instantly onto Madeline with familiar concern. "Madeline," he said gently, "I came as soon as I heard." Grant stiffened. "You have no right to be here." Daniel didn't even look at him. "Actually, I have every right. I represent the Carter estate, and Madeline is the sole beneficiary. Which means I'm here for her, no one else." Madeline felt her throat tighten. Daniel had been her parents' lawyer since she was a teenager. He'd attended birthdays, college events, and even her wedding, though Grant barely remembered him. Daniel was steady, always patient, and he had a way of speaking that made complicated things feel survivable. But tonight, she could barely hold herself up. Her legs trembled as the nurse wheeled her back toward her room. The adrenaline that kept her upright earlier had vanished, replaced by exhaustion so heavy she felt it in her bones. She looked down at baby A, sleeping against her, then at the 2 empty bassinet tags still clipped inside the NICU. 3 tiny lives. 3 reasons to keep breathing. As they entered her room, the warm lights flickered, the faint hum of machines filling the air. The nurse transferred baby A into a warmer and helped Madeline back into the hospital bed. Her body felt weak, fragile, as if any emotion might shatter her. Daniel stepped closer. "You don't have to say anything yet. Just rest." But resting was impossible. Grant barged in behind them before the door even fully closed. "This is ridiculous," he barked. "You," he pointed at Daniel, "need to leave before I have security remove you." Eleanor's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Grant, if anyone is getting removed, it will be you." He spun toward her. She's my wife. And you treated her like a disposable assistant, Eleanor shot back. She's still recovering from childbirth. You have no legal or ethical standing to harass her right now. Grant's face reddened. I'm not harassing her. I'm trying to get closure. Madeline finally spoke, her voice raw. Closure? You handed me divorce papers before I even held my babies. If you prostimzav or out further, we're nouts. Grant flinched just barely, but enough for everyone in the room to see it. Madeline, don't be dramatic, he said. Our marriage has been dead for months. Daniel's jaw tightened. And yet you waited until she was physically weak and emotionally vulnerable to strike. Convenient timing. Grant shot him a glare. Stay out of this. No, Daniel said calmly. I won't. Those 3 words carried more weight than Grant expected. He stepped back, eyes narrowing. Madeline's heart pounded. Every sound, every movement felt amplified. Her chest tightened as the weight of everything, birth, betrayal, exhaustion, crashed over her at once. Her breath hitched. Then again. Her vision blurred. Madeline? Eleanor rushed forward. Sweetheart, breathe. Slow, in, out. She couldn't. The nurse immediately checked her vitals. Blood pressure is crashing. She's hyperventilating. She needs space. Daniel rested a hand on the bed rail. Steady, grounding. Madeline, look at me. You're safe. You're not alone. But Grant took a step closer, as if he had any right to comfort her. Maddie, calm down. You're overreacting. Get out, Eleanor snapped. Now, you caused this. Medical staff pushed past them, lowering the bed, adjusting oxygen, calling for additional monitors. Madeline tried to inhale, but everything felt tight, collapsing inward. Panic, fear, shame, all of it surged. A nurse pushed Grant toward the door. Sir, you need to leave. You're making it worse. Too exable. He resisted. I'm her husband. You're not acting like one, Daniel said sharply. Grant froze. Because deep down, he knew it was true. He stepped back, stunned into silence for the first time all night. Then the overhead speaker chimed. Code Pink. The hospital's alert for infant emergencies. And it was coming from the NICU. Something was wrong with one of the triplets. The hallway outside Madeline's room erupted in motion as nurses sprinted toward the NICU. The overhead speaker repeated the words no new mother should ever hear. Code Pink, NICU. Code Pink, NICU. Madeline's heart dropped. Her breath, already thin and shaky, vanished completely. My baby, which one? She whispered, terrified. The nurse at her bedside squeezed her hand gently. We'll find out in a moment. Stay still, Mrs. Carter. We're monitoring you. But staying still felt impossible. Every cell in her body screamed to get up, run, break through every door until she found her child. Her hand trembled as she reached for Daniel, who stepped closer instantly. It's okay, Daniel said softly. We'll get answers. Grant stood frozen by the door, suddenly pale. Panic flickered in his eyes, not the kind born from love or concern, but from the fear of losing control over a situation he thought he could manage. For the first time since he entered the hospital, he looked unsure. A doctor rushed into the room, still wearing gloves. Mrs. Carter, one of the triplets, is having trouble maintaining oxygen levels. We're stabilizing him now. It's common for premature multiples, but we need you to stay calm. Which baby? Madeline begged. Baby C, the doctor answered. He's responding, but we're monitoring closely. Madeline closed her eyes as a wave of relief and fear crashed together. Baby C. Her smallest one, her fighter. She whispered a silent prayer. Daniel leaned closer. They know what they're doing. He's in the best place possible. Grant finally stepped forward, clearing his throat. Is he going to be okay? I mean, you people know what you're doing, right? You people? Eleanor muttered under her breath. She almost rolled her eyes. The doctor nodded politely. We're taking every measure, sir. You can't enter the NICU yet, but you'll be updated. Grant exhaled sharply. Fine, but keep me informed. I have meetings. Eleanor cut him a glare so sharp it could have cracked glass. Not tonight, you don't. Grant ignored her, pulling out his phone, already texting someone. Madeline didn't need to ask who. A few minutes later, when the crisis alarms finally quieted, a soft knock interrupted the tension. The NICU nurse entered, the same one who had witnessed Grant whispering into the phone earlier. She looked troubled. Mrs. Carter? she said quietly. "There's something you should know. When Baby C's oxygen levels dropped, we checked the visitation log. Someone tried to enter the NICU earlier without authorization." Madeline frowned. "Who?" The nurse hesitated. "A young woman, blonde, expensive red coat, said she was family." Eleanor's eyebrows lifted. "Family?" The nurse nodded. "She claimed she was here to see Mr. Sullivan." Security escorted her out. Madeline froze. Grant stiffened. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "Ava?" The nurse swallowed. "She said she needed to tell him something urgent." Grant stepped forward defensively. "This is ridiculous. Ava wouldn't." "She shouldn't be here at all," Eleanor snapped. "It's a maternity ward." The nurse continued, voice tense. She seemed upset, agitated. She tried to follow one of the pediatric attendants into the NICU hallway. If security hadn't intervened, she might have gotten closer. Madeline's stomach knotted. "Closer? To my babies?" "She never touched them," the nurse assured quickly, "but unauthorized access is taken seriously, especially tonight." Grant ran a hand through his hair, suddenly sweating. She misunderstood. She was just trying to do what? Daniel demanded. "Deliver congratulations? In the middle of the night? At a locked NICU?" Grant clenched his jaw. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice dangerously calm. "Madeline, this isn't just about infidelity anymore. It's about safety. Your parents put protections in place for a reason. And tonight proved why." Madeline tried to steady her breath. One hand pressed over her aching chest. Her whole world felt like it was tilting, her child in distress, her husband's lies unraveling, and now his mistress appearing in the one place she never should have been. The nurse hesitated. "One more moment." "There's something else," she added softly. "Ava said she wouldn't leave until she spoke to Mr. Sullivan. She said she had news. And Mastery is not 23. Grant's face drained of color. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Eleanor folded her arms, expression cutting. Madeline stared at her husband, her voice trembling. "Grant, what news?" Grant opened his mouth. But he never got the chance to answer. Security entered the room asking to speak with him. 2 uniformed security officers stepped into the room, their expressions firm but courteous. Behind them, the hallway lights cast long shadows, adding tension to every breath inside the small hospital room. "Mr. Sullivan," the taller officer said, "we need to speak with you regarding an incident on the 3rd floor." Grant forced a laugh. "This is a misunderstanding. I'm with my wife, my newborns. I'm not leaving." The officer didn't flinch. "Sir, the woman involved in the earlier disturbance identified you as her contact. She's still downstairs demanding to see you. Business. Infection doll." You could have heard a pin drop. Madeline felt the air crush her chest again, but not from panic this time. From the raw sting of being betrayed so openly, so shamelessly. Eleanor lifted her chin. "Grant, you should go. If your mistress is causing chaos at a hospital, that's your responsibility." Grant rounded on her. "Stay out of this." Daniel stepped between them, calm but solid, like a man who'd been preparing for this confrontation for years. "Let him go, Eleanor. The sooner he faces what he's created, the better for everyone." The nurse near the monitors exhaled softly, clearly relieved someone was taking control. Grant clicked his tongue with annoyance but followed security out of the room. The door shut behind them with a quiet thud, quiet but final. For the first time since this nightmare began, the room felt breathable. Madeline closed her eyes. Why is she here? Why now? Daniel pulled up a chair. Because men like Grant don't keep their lives separate. They think they can manage chaos by pretending it isn't chaos. Eleanor placed a gentle hand on Madeline's shoulder. Let her make noise. The louder she gets, the easier the truth becomes. But downstairs, the truth was far messier than any of them expected. Grant descended the stairwell with security at his heels. As soon as he stepped into the lobby, Ava Brooks stood up from a bench, mascara smudged, eyes swollen, her expensive red coat looking too bright under the white lights. She stormed toward him. "Grant, you disappeared. I've been calling you for hours." "Ava, lower your voice," Grant hissed, glancing at the reception desk. She didn't. "No, I won't lower my voice. You said you'd be with me tonight. You said after she gave birth, you'd be done." The security guards exchanged looks. Grant froze. "Ava, not here." But Ava was past listening. Her emotions had spilled over the edge hours ago. I told you I couldn't handle this anymore, she cried. I told you I couldn't hide forever, and you still disappeared on me. You didn't even answer when I told you. She stopped abruptly. Grant stiffened. When you told me what? Ava swallowed hard, her hands shaking. That I'm pregnant. Grant went still, completely still. Upstairs, as if the universe could sense the shift, Baby C's oxygen monitor beeped softly in the NICU, but stabilized a second later, unnoticed in the chaos below. Meanwhile, in her hospital bed, Madeline stared at the door, a strange calm settling over her. Eleanor and Daniel watched her closely as she whispered, "He's hiding something. I can feel it." Back downstairs, the security guard lowered his voice. "Sir, we need to know if this woman is going to continue causing disruption." "And Fortin?" Ava pointed a trembling finger at Grant. "Tell them, Grant. Tell them what you promised. Tell them why you wanted the divorce done tonight." Grant's face twisted. "Ava, stop. Tell them," she repeated, voice cracking, "that you plan to leave her with nothing so you wouldn't have to split anything with either of us." Every head in the lobby turned. Grant's career, his reputation, his entire public image, cracked in one instant. He grabbed Ava's arm. "We're leaving." She yanked away. "Not until you tell them the whole truth." Before Grant could silence her, an elevator dinged behind him. The doors opened, and inside the elevator, standing tall despite exhaustion, was Madeline. She had come downstairs, and she had heard enough. For a moment, the entire hospital lobby fell silent. The soft hum of the overhead lights, the distant ringing of phones, even the shuffle of night shift staff, all of it faded as Madeline stepped out of the elevator. She wasn't strong enough to walk without help. Her body was trembling, her hospital gown hidden beneath a loose cardigan the nurse had thrown over her shoulders. But her eyes were clearer than they had been all night. Grant turned toward her, shock gripping every muscle in his face. "Madeline, you shouldn't be out of bed." She didn't answer him. She didn't need to. Ava stood frozen several feet away, her red coat looking almost garish under the harsh lobby lights. Mascara streaked her cheeks. Her hands were wrapped protectively around her stomach. "Pregnant." Madeline felt the words like cold glass piercing her skin. Daniel rushed forward from the elevator, steadying her by the elbow. Eleanor followed, her posture tall, protective, ready to strike if needed. Madeline's breathing was shallow, but steady. "How long?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Grant blinked. "How long what? How long have you been with her?" His silence was all the answer she needed. Ava's chin quivered. "He told me he was leaving you months ago. He said you two were basically separated." Madeline didn't look at her. Her gaze was fixed on Grant, as if truly seeing him for the first time. "Separation?" Madeline repeated softly. "While I was on bed rest? While I was carrying your children?" Grant stepped forward. "Maddie, listen, this isn't the time. You're emotional. You're exhausted. You don't understand." "Don't," Madeline breathed. "Don't tell me what I understand." People around them, nurses, receptionists, security tried not to stare, but couldn't look away. The polished marble lobby felt like a stage, and Grant's perfectly controlled image was unraveling in real time. Ava wiped her cheeks. "Grant told me he had nothing, that everything he has is tied to the company. He said he needed a clean break with you to protect his future. Our future." Madeline's heart twisted because that part at least was true. Grant had always loved his future more than his family. Eleanor stepped forward then, her voice sharp as a blade. "Miss Brooks, you should know, the mansion you've been hoping to decorate, the land you thought you'd inherit, none of it belongs to him. It never did." Ava frowned. "What are you talking about?" Grant's eyes flashed panic, the first real crack in his polished armor. "Eleanor, stay out of..." She cut him off. "Your lover here built fantasies based on assets he doesn't control. Assets that legally belong to Madeline." Ava's gaze whipped toward Grant. "What? You said you told me..." "I told you what you needed to hear," Grant snapped. "We'll deal with the trust later." Daniel let out a cold laugh. "There is no later." Grant turned on him. "And who the hell do you think you are?" Daniel stepped forward, unflinching. "I'm the attorney who manages the trust your wife owns. The trust you tried to manipulate without understanding a single clause inside it." Gasps echoed softly through the lobby. Ava staggered backward. "You used me." "I didn't, Ava. You need to calm down," Grant muttered. Calm down, she screamed. I jeopardized my job for you. I changed my whole life for you. And now you're telling me everything you promised was a lie? Grant reached for her, but she jerked her hand away, as if his touch burned. Madeline closed her eyes not because she couldn't bear to watch, but because she finally no longer needed to. The truth was laid bare. Grant was exactly who she feared, and worse. Security stepped closer, unsure if the situation would escalate again. Daniel leaned toward Madeline. Let's take you back upstairs. You shouldn't be on your feet. Ade and Serge. She nodded, tears threatening but not falling. Before they could turn, a small voice from behind whispered, Mrs. Carter? It was the NICU nurse, her face pale, her hands trembling. There's another issue with baby C. You need to come now. The elevator ride back to the NICU felt unbearably slow. Every second dragged like wet sand. Madeline clutched the railing with trembling fingers, her knees weak, her heart beating in panicked, uneven bursts. Daniel stood beside her, steady and calm, while Eleanor pressed the door close button repeatedly, as though she could bend steel with urgency alone. When the elevator doors opened, the hallway outside the NICU radiated cold fluorescent light. A doctor waited there. Dr. Abrams, the neonatologist with the soft voice and sharp eyes. Tonight, though, his face looked heavier. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, baby C had another drop in oxygen saturation. We were able to stabilize him, but he needs close monitoring. Madeline's breath shook. Is he in pain? No, Dr. Abrams reassured, but he is struggling a bit more than his siblings. It can happen with preemies. His lungs just need time. Time? The word felt both comforting and terrifying. Madeline nodded, gripping Daniel's arm as she took a slow step toward the glass wall, separating her from the babies. Inside the NICU, nurses moved efficiently around the tiny incubators, adjusting monitors, repositioning sensors, checking vitals with practiced hands. Her eyes found baby C, the smallest of the three. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, a tiny fighter in a world too big for him. Daniel lowered his voice. You're doing everything right, Madeline. She didn't answer. She pressed a hand against the glass, wishing she could trade places with him, wishing she could breathe for him. Behind them, Grant stepped off the elevator. His face was drained, his movements stiff. He looked like a man who had just watched his life slip through his fingers. He walked toward them, opening his mouth as if to speak, but Eleanor raised a hand sharply. Not now. Grant stopped, swallowing hard. He's my son. For once, Eleanor said, act like it, and that means silence. Grant exhaled shakily, something resembling genuine fear flickering in his eyes. It struck Madeline then almost painfully that he wasn't afraid of losing baby C. He was afraid of losing control. A nurse stepped out of the NICU. Mrs. Carter, you can come inside for skin to skin. Only you. Madeline nodded, wiping her eyes. The nurse held the door open, and warm, sterile air enveloped her as she stepped inside. The rhythmic beeping of monitors filled her ears as she approached the incubator. The nurse lifted baby C carefully, placing him against Madeline's bare chest. The baby let out a small sigh, a whisper of life, settling into her warmth. Madeline inhaled deeply. I'm here, sweetheart. Mama's here. His tiny fingers curled against her skin. And for the first time that night, she felt something fierce ignite inside her, an instinct older than fear. A mother's vow she wasn't going to break. She wasn't going to let anyone, Grant, Ava, or any storm he created touch her baby's futures. She pressed a kiss against her son's forehead. You're going to be okay, she whispered. We're going to be okay. Outside the glass, Daniel watched her with a quiet ache in his eyes. Eleanor stood beside him, arms crossed but expression softened. Even the nurse paused, visibly moved. Grant, however, stood farther back, his shoulders tense, his jaw clenched, his eyes darting, calculating, uncertain, crumbling. He had spent years believing he could control everything, his company, his narrative, his image, even his marriage. But what stood before him now was something he couldn't manipulate. A mother holding her child, a woman finding her strength, a life he no longer belonged to. As Madeline rocked baby C gently, the NICU door opened again. Another nurse stepped in, carrying a chart. She whispered something to the attending physician. He turned sharply toward Madeline. Mrs. Carter, he said, voice tight, urgent, we have a new concern. It's about baby A. And to Devon. 3S. 2. For a split second, Madeline couldn't process the doctor's words. Baby A? Another concern? Her heart, already fragile, squeezed so hard her breath caught. The nurse hovering near the incubator motioned gently. Mrs. Carter, let me help you place baby C back. We need to check baby A's vitals urgently. Madeline nodded, her hands shaking as she kissed baby C's forehead before the nurse lifted him away with practiced care. The absence of his warmth against her chest hit harder than she expected. She moved toward baby A's incubator, her legs unsteady. The monitors blinked rapidly, a cluster of numbers she didn't understand but instinctively feared. Dr. Abrams stepped closer. Baby A's heart rate became irregular during the last reading. We're performing additional tests. It may be a benign flutter, but we need to act quickly. Madeline pressed her hand to the plexiglass. Is he hurting? No, doctor. Abrams assured softly, but he needs vigilance. Behind her, the NICU door opened, and Daniel and Eleanor stepped quietly inside after sanitizing. Their faces mirrored the same worry that had settled in Madeline's chest like a stone. Grant remained outside the glass, pacing, raking a hand through his hair as though the crisis was an inconvenience rather than a fear. Eleanor lowered her voice. Madeline, breathe, you're stronger than you think. But strength felt like a distant memory. As a nurse prepared equipment, memories flashed through Madeline's mind, tiny moments from the pregnancy. Baby A had always been the active one, kicking first, baby B steady and calm, baby C small and delicate. She had whispered to each of them nightly, telling them stories about the world waiting for them. She had believed Grant would be part of that world. Now she wished she had imagined it without him. Dr. Abrams adjusted a monitor. His numbers are stabilizing, but I want to be cautious. We'll run an EKG and a blood gas analysis. Madeline nodded again, though her vision blurred with unshed tears. Daniel stepped beside her. Is there anything she can do? He asked quietly. For now, the doctor said. Stay calm. The babies sense stress. Her presence helps. Madeline exhaled shakily. I'm trying. We know, Daniel said. Eleanor placed a steadying hand on her back. You're not alone. Your children aren't alone. 2040. Across the glass, Grant suddenly slammed his palm against the window, startling several nurses. How long is this going to take? Can someone explain what's happening? Dr. Abrams stiffened. Sir, you need to step back. Stress disrupts the sterile environment. Grant scoffed but retreated a step. The arrogance was still there, but it was cracking at the edges, fracturing under pressure he didn't know how to handle. Madeline watched him for a long moment, feeling a profound shift inside her. She had spent years waiting for him to show up emotionally. And now, watching him unravel, she realized something. He wasn't capable of showing up. Not for her. Not for their children. Not for anyone. The NICU door opened again, and a technician wheeled in additional equipment. The beeping monitors echoed in rhythmic pulses, markers of fragile life. Madeline leaned closer, whispering through the plexiglass. Mama's here. You're going to be okay. Ever. As if hearing her, baby A's heart monitor steadied a fraction. Relief washed over her like warm water. Daniel let out a breath. Good sign. Eleanor nodded. Very good. And for the first time in hours, something hopeful flickered inside her. But that fragile hope was shattered a moment later, when the NICU nurse entered with her tablet, glancing between Madeline and the doctor. There's something else, she said hesitantly. A flag came up on the visitor log. Someone tried accessing the NICU earlier using a forged family ID. Dr. Abrams frowned. Another unauthorized attempt? The nurse nodded slowly, and her next words turned the room cold. The forged ID. It was made using Mr. Sullivan's credentials. Madeline gasped. Eleanor froze. Daniel's expression darkened. Grant's chaos wasn't over, it was just beginning. For a moment, the room felt frozen. The nurse's words hung in the air like icy fog. A forged entry badge. Made using Grant Sullivan's credentials. Used by someone trying to get into the NICU. Madeline felt her stomach twist. Why would someone do that? Why would they use his ID? No one answered immediately. Daniel's voice came first, calm, but edged with steel. Because whoever forged it believed Grant had the authority and the access. Eleanor's eyes sharpened. And because Grant has been reckless with the people he lets into his life. She didn't say Ava's name. She didn't need to. Madeline closed her eyes, steadying herself. She had held her babies inside her body for months, shielding them from the world. Now, the world, Grant's world, felt like the greatest threat. The NICU nurse stepped closer. "Mrs. Carter, the babies are stable for now. Dr. Abrams suggested something that might help them, and you." "Help me?" Madeline whispered. "Skin to skin for all three," the nurse said. "A bonding moment. It might help regulate their vitals." And he suggested something else. "A naming moment." Madeline blinked. "Naming? It's symbolic," the nurse replied softly. "Rituals can help mothers reclaim emotional grounding, and it helps the babies hear your voice as their mother." Madeline exhaled shakily. Daniel nodded. "It's a beautiful idea." Eleanor smiled gently. "Your parents would have loved that." Madeline's chest tightened. Her parents, people Grant never deserved to be connected to. People whose legacy he tried to piggyback on without ever understanding the weight of it. The nurses dimmed the lights and moved carefully, bringing the three tiny babies closer. Baby C was still the smallest, Baby A was stabilizing, and Baby B looked strong and steady. They placed the infants in warmed blankets across Madeline's lap as she sat in a recliner. The room softened around her. Every beeping machine faded into background rhythm. She looked down at her children, three fragile, perfect lives. Baby A stirred first. "I'll name you Aiden," she whispered, "because it means little fire, and you're already fighting." Baby B blinked slowly, as if hearing her. "You'll be Benjamin, brave and steady." Baby C sighed in his sleep, almost like a tiny mule. "And you, Caleb, my little warrior." Daniel watched, his expression softening in a way he rarely allowed in public. Eleanor discreetly dabbed at her eyes. Even the nurses paused, visibly moved. It was a quiet moment, a sacred one, a moment where Madeline reclaimed something. Grant tried to steal her identity as a mother, as a woman with roots deeper than his ambition. And then, a sharp buzz broke the silence. The NICU phone rang. The attending nurse answered, her expression tightening. She turned toward Madeline. "That was hospital security," she said. "The forged badge attempt wasn't random. The person used Mr. Sullivan's ID, and they tried to access your baby's incubators directly." Madeline's breath stopped. Grant, still outside the glass, heard it too. His face went blank. Eleanor stepped forward. "Who was it?" The nurse swallowed. "Security detained the suspect after reviewing the footage." A silence heavier than fear settled over the room. Madeline gripped the blankets around her babies. "Tell me." The nurse hesitated, then spoke. "It was the same woman from earlier. The one in the red coat. Ava Brooks." Grant stumbled a step back, genuinely rattled. Madeline felt her pulse pound, but her voice stayed steady. What was she trying to do? The nurse exchanged a grim look with Dr. Abrams, who had just re-entered the room. "She claimed," the doctor said carefully, "that she needed access because of her connection to Mr. Sullivan." Madeline frowned. "Her connection?" Dr. Abrams nodded. "She told security she should be allowed in because she was family." 1P. Grant froze. Eleanor's hand curled into a fist. Daniel stepped forward, voice low. "What did she say exactly?" The doctor looked at them with grave reluctance. "She said she needed access to the Carter triplets," he answered, "because she is carrying the next Sullivan heir." Madeline felt the room tilt. And then Grant spoke the words that shattered what little was left. For a long moment, the room didn't move. Not the nurses, not the monitors, not even the air. It was as if every breath in the NICU froze in place, waiting for the final blow. Grant swallowed, his throat clicking audibly in the silence. When he spoke, it wasn't with anger, or panic, or excuses. It was worse. It was resignation. "Madeline, it's true." The words cracked through her chest like a splitting branch. Her fingers tightened around the blankets covering the triplets. Aiden stirred. Benjamin whimpered. Caleb shifted weakly, sensing tension as infants often do. Eleanor took a sharp step forward. "Grant, for God's sake." But Grant continued, eyes locked on the floor instead of her. "She's pregnant, and I've known for weeks." Madeline didn't cry. She couldn't. It was like her body had run out of tears, run out of reactions, run out of space to hold any more pain. She felt hollow. A quiet, dangerous hollow. The kind that comes right before something inside a person breaks, or transforms. Daniel's jaw clenched. And that gives her the right to try to sneak into a NICU? To forge identification? To get near premature babies? Grant winced. I didn't tell her to do that. She acted on her own. Oh, how convenient, Eleanor hissed. Your mistress risking the safety of newborns, yet somehow you're clean as a whistle? Madeline finally lifted her gaze to him. Why? She whispered. He blinked. What? Why did you give her access to your credentials? Why did she think she belonged here? Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with clarity. And why did she believe she should see my children? Grant stepped closer, but Daniel moved protectively in front of Madeline without hesitation. Grant stopped. I didn't give her anything, he insisted. She must have found my badge. She goes through my stuff sometimes. That, Eleanor snapped, is not the defense you think it is. Thanks for watching. The Dending. A nurse approached gingerly. Mrs. Carter, we can relocate you to a private room if this is too distressing. Madeline shook her head slowly. No, I'm not leaving my children. Her voice had changed, steadier, colder. A softness had vanished from it. A softness she'd given Grant for years, softening whenever he hurt her, softening whenever he dismissed her, softening because she believed marriage meant patience. Not anymore. She looked at the doctor. Are my babies stable for the moment? Dr. Abrams nodded. Yes, their vitals are improving with your presence. Good, she whispered. Then I can focus. She turned fully to Grant then, her expression calm in a way that made even Eleanor straighten. You came here tonight, she said quietly, to end our marriage. But what you really ended was the last piece of respect I had for you. Grant shifted. Madeline. No, she cut in, voice soft but sharp enough to slice through the cold room. You don't get to speak over me anymore. Daniel stood taller. Eleanor lifted her chin. Even the NICU nurse stepped back respectfully, recognizing the moment unfolding. You betrayed me while I carried your children, Madeline continued. You lied to me while I was fighting to keep them alive. And you handed credentials to a woman who put them at risk. That wasn't my intention. But it was the outcome, she said. And outcomes matter, especially when children are involved. Does everyone. Grant's composure finally cracked. He stepped forward again. Maddie, please don't do this here. Not in front of. In front of who? She asked. Your audience, your image, your mistress, your unborn child? Grant flinched, shame creeping across his expression. The shame he'd avoided for years. Madeline inhaled, a slow, controlled breath of a woman stepping into her power. From this moment on, she said, I choose my children, I choose myself, and I choose a future without you in it. Bada. Grant stared at her in stunned silence. And then the NICU speaker chimed overhead. The doctor turned sharply. That's the security line, he murmured. Answer it. The nurse picked up the phone, listened, then paled. She looked directly at Madeline. Mrs. Carter, the woman in the red coat just attempted something else downstairs. Madeline's pulse thudded. What now? She whispered. The nurse swallowed. She asked for an attorney. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Why? The nurse hesitated. She said she needed one, because she's ready to confess. Everything. Downstairs, the small hospital consultation room buzzed with tension. Ava Brooks sat hunched in a chair, her red coat draped around her like a collapsing shield. Her mascara streaks had dried, leaving dark smudges beneath swollen eyes. Her trembling hands clutched a plastic cup of water she hadn't touched. She looked nothing like the polished, confident girl Grant had paraded around Manhattan restaurants. She looked young, frightened, abandoned. The security officer stood near the door. Miss Brooks, the attorney you requested is on the way. Ava shook her head violently. No, not just any attorney. Her voice cracked. I want someone who will actually listen. She swallowed. He lied to me. He told me I'd be protected. The officer exchanged a look with the nurse beside him. We can't comment on that. What matters is your cooperation. Ava wiped at her nose. You don't understand. He said the babies wouldn't matter. He said once the divorce was done, everything would fall into place. He promised me a life. A voice from the doorway spoke before anyone else could. That's because Grant Sullivan promises lives he never intends to give. Ava looked up sharply. Eleanor Whitford stood there, calm, controlled, and unnervingly composed. Daniel stepped in behind her, hands folded in front of him, expression unreadable. Ava's breath hitched. You're the lawyer, her lawyer. Eleanor corrected her gently. Her parents' lawyer. And the trustee of the entire Carter estate. Ava paled. So it's true, she owns everything. Daniel nodded. Everything he told you was a lie. The mansion, the land, the future he dangled in front of you, it was never his to give. Ava shook her head. He told me he needed to end the marriage so he wouldn't lose half. He said Madeline was nothing without him. Eleanor exhaled a humorless laugh. He underestimated the wrong woman. Ava's lips quivered. I wasn't trying to hurt the babies, I swear. I was confused. He ignored my calls. He told me to stay hidden, then he disappeared for days. Daniel's voice softened, but stayed firm. Why did you use his badge, Ava? Ava sank deeper into the chair. Because I panicked. I was scared he'd changed his mind about me. I needed to talk to him. And then when I heard the babies were born early, I thought, maybe he'd want me to be there. She covered her face with her hands. I didn't know it was wrong. I wasn't thinking. Eleanor's tone sharpened. You forged identification for access to newborns. You approached a locked NICU. That's not confusion, Ava. That's danger. Tears spilled over Ava's fingers. He said everything would be okay once the divorce was signed. That he'd settle things with her and then come back to me. That we'd raise our baby together. Daniel exchanged a glance with Eleanor. Both saw it, the desperation of someone who'd been manipulated by the same man who had tried to dismantle Madeline's life. Tell us what you want now, Daniel said quietly. Ava looked up, eyes hollow. I want the truth on record. I want my child protected, and I want him held accountable. Eleanor stepped closer. Then start talking. Ava nodded shakily. Grant told me to get rid of anything that could tie him to me before the divorce. Messages, photos, transfers. He said his company couldn't take another scandal. Daniel's jaw tightened. Another? Ava nodded. I'm not the first. I'm just the one who got pregnant. Eleanor's breath caught. And, Ava whispered, voice barely audible, he made me sign something. A confidentiality agreement he drafted himself. I didn't understand it, but he said if I didn't sign it, he'd leave me. And one. Daniel inhaled sharply. Do you still have it? Ava nodded slowly. In my bag. Eleanor motioned to the security guard. We'll need to collect that. Ava's hands trembled as she reached into her purse, pulling out a crumpled envelope. There's something else, something you should know. Eleanor leaned forward. Tell us. Ava's voice cracked. Grant told me. He didn't want the triplets. He said once the divorce was finalized, he'd find a way to challenge custody. He said he'd make sure she looked unstable. Daniel's expression turned to ice. Eleanor's eyes darkened. Before anyone could react, the intercom crackled overhead. Miss Whitford, Mr. Hayes' NICU requests your immediate return. Ava swallowed again, shaking. What happened now? She whispered. Eleanor exchanged a look with Daniel, her voice tight. Something's wrong upstairs. By the time Eleanor and Daniel rushed back to the NICU floor, the tension in the hallway had thickened like fog. Madeline sat in a recliner near the glass wall, cradling Benjamin and humming softly an unsteady lullaby born from pure instinct. Aiden and Caleb rested in warmers beside her, their vitals stable but fragile. The attending nurse approached Eleanor quietly. The babies are okay, she whispered. But Mrs. Carter's blood pressure spiked again. We need the room calm. Daniel exhaled in relief. Good. But Eleanor noticed Madeline's hands trembling, fragile, exhausted, yet steady enough to hold her son's. The sight only hardened her resolve. Behind them, Grant stood pressed against the far wall, pacing. His hair was disheveled, his tie askew, his face paling with every passing minute. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man watching a tower he built collapse floor by floor. And collapse it did. A hospital administrator approached cautiously. Mr. Sullivan, there's a call for you from your company's internal audit team. They said it's urgent. Grant blinked. Audit team? What audit team? It's nearly midnight. They said you'll want to hear it. Grant snatched the phone and stepped into a corner. Eleanor folded her arms. Let's see how long he keeps pretending he has control. Daniel nodded. His board must have sensed the PR smoke already. In the NICU, Madeline looked up wearily. What's happening now? Eleanor knelt beside her. Just the world catching up to reality, sweetheart. While Grant barked into the phone, Daniel leaned closer. If Ava's confession is as thorough as she claims, the board will act fast. They can't afford liabilities. Madeline swallowed. I'm tired of everything collapsing around me. Eleanor took her hand. Sometimes things collapse, so new foundations can be built. You survived the hardest part, now the consequences fall on the right shoulders. There the balance. Grant's voice suddenly rose, sharp and desperate. That's not possible. Check the transfers again. Those funds were pre-approved. Daniel's eyes darkened. There it is. A nurse looked over, startled. What's happening to him? Eleanor answered softly. His empire is cracking. Grant slammed the phone against his palm. No, this is a mistake. He turned toward them, his face a twisted blend of fear and fury. Did you know about this? Did your precious trust trigger this? Daniel stepped forward. Your audit issues aren't because of the trust. They're because of you. Grant advanced, jaw clenched. You think you know everything? You think you're the hero in this story? No, Daniel replied calmly. But you're definitely the villain. Grant lunged, but a security guard intercepted, grabbing his arm firmly. Sir, you need to keep your distance. Get off me, Grant roared. This is all her fault. She turned the company against me. Madeline's voice, though soft, cut through the chaos. You did that all by yourself. He spun toward her. Her eyes, exhausted, bloodshot, but unwavering, held a strength she didn't have hours ago. You betrayed your vows. You endangered your children. You lied to everyone who trusted you. And you're still blaming me. Grant opened his mouth to speak, but the elevator dinged sharply. Everyone turned as the doors opened. A group of 3 people stepped out, 2 men in tailored suits and a woman holding a briefcase. Corporate. Clean. Unforgiving. The lead man approached Grant. Mr. Sullivan, we're from the Board Oversight Committee. We've been trying to reach you. Grant stiffened. What are you doing here? The woman opened the briefcase, pulling out a stack of documents. We've uncovered several unauthorized transfers and compliance violations. You're being placed under immediate administrative suspension. Grant's face drained. You can't do this, he whispered. But they already had. Eleanor's eyes narrowed with quiet satisfaction. Madeline held her babies a little closer. Grant staggered back, breath unsteady, his empire spiraling in freefall. Then the board representative added, We also need to discuss the confidential agreement involving Miss Brooks. That violation puts the company in legal jeopardy. Grant froze. And for the first time, pure fear settled into his eyes. Because he realized the next consequence would not be about money. 2 days later, the hospital finally discharged the triplets into a special care home program. Madeline was still weak, walking slowly with the help of a nurse as Daniel and Eleanor handled paperwork. The winter air outside Manhattan General cut sharp against her cheeks as she was helped into Daniel's car, a black Mercedes S-Class. He drove rarely, only on important matters. Today, qualified, she wasn't going back to an apartment. She wasn't going back to anywhere Grant had ever touched. She was going home, the Carter mansion. When the car turned into the long, gated driveway, Madeline exhaled shakily. The mansion rose like a quiet piece of history, stone walls covered in winter ivy, arched windows glowing gold from interior lamps, snow dusting the roof. Her childhood home, a place Grant had always treated like a trophy, never understanding it was sanctuary. But there, in the courtyard, Grant stood waiting, hands shoved into his coat pockets. Eyes dark, jaw clenched, like a man preparing for battle. Daniel pulled to a stop. Stay in the car, he told her. No, Madeline said quietly. I need to face this. She stepped out slowly, careful with her fresh incisions, while Eleanor carried the babies inside. Aiden grumbled weakly. Benjamin whimpered. Caleb slept. Grant's gaze stayed fixed on Madeline. This is my home too, he said, voice low. Madeline didn't flinch. No, it never was. He laughed bitterly. I lived here. I paid for renovations. You paid for a kitchen remodel, she said. But the foundation, the land, the deed, all Carter. If it ever sees. Daniel stepped beside her, holding a folder. Grant, your name has never appeared on any ownership document tied to this estate. You were a guest here. Grant's jaw twitched. You're lying. Eleanor walked down the steps from the foyer, holding a thick binder. Then allow me to educate you. She opened it to the first page, the Carter title deed, signed 32 years ago. Then the trust assignment, the succession clause, the inheritance schedule, the prenup, all bearing signatures, none belonging to Grant. This, Eleanor said, is the legal reality you ignored. Grant snatched the binder and flipped through it, his eyes widening with every page until his voice cracked. No, this isn't right. She told me she didn't own anything. Madeline's expression was calm, almost eerily so. I didn't know the details. But you never asked. You never cared. Grant turned on her, desperation leaking through his arrogance. We can fix this. Maddie, listen to me. I didn't marry you for the estate. I chose you. You used me, she corrected softly. You used my family name to climb, and when you thought I had nothing left to offer, you tried to trade me in for someone easier to control. Grant's face twisted, shame and fury warring in his eyes. I was under pressure. My board, my investors, my image. Your image, Madeline repeated. That's all you ever loved. Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. Think about our children. If you have not go, she met his stare head on. I am. Something in him snapped. He grabbed her wrist. Daniel lunged forward immediately. Let go of her. Grant didn't release. She's my wife. She's your legal equal, Eleanor snapped. And this estate is hers. Touching her on Carter property without consent? That's trespassing with aggravated circumstances. Grant froze. Eleanor continued, voice low and lethal. You need to leave. Right now. 18. Grant looked around wildly mansion behind him, consequences closing in, the life he built slipping like sand through his fists. You can't just erase me, he whispered. Madeline inhaled slowly. I'm not erasing you, Grant. You did that yourself. Daniel stepped forward, holding a legal notice. By the way, this is a temporary restraining order. Effective immediately. You're barred from this estate and from contacting Madeline until further review. Grant staggered back, eyes wide. No, you can't. Madeline, please. But then, a black SUV turned into the driveway. Corporate-styled. Heavy, unmarked. Grant's face blanched. Daniel exhaled. I was wondering when they'd arrive. Madeline frowned. Who is it? Eleanor's lips tightened. The federal compliance team, she said. Grant's knees almost buckled. They weren't here for Madeline. They were here for him. The SUV doors swung open with a weighty finality. 3 federal compliance officers stepped out, wearing dark coats and purposeful expressions. Their presence alone shifted the air. Snow crunched under their polished shoes as they moved toward the courtyard. Grant instinctively backed away. No, this can't be happening. The lead officer lifted a badge. Mr. Grant Sullivan? Grant didn't answer, his throat had locked. This is regarding multiple irregularities flagged during your company's annual compliance review, the officer continued. We've been trying to reach you for 72 hours. Grant's jaw worked open and closed. That's a misunderstanding. My team is handling it. Your team, the officer said evenly, has turned over evidence suggesting otherwise. Grant stared blankly. Daniel folded his hands behind his back, calm and observant. Eleanor remained still as a statue, watching every detail. The officer pulled out a sealed folder. We have concerns about unauthorized transfers, internal manipulation of investor reports, and a confidentiality agreement drafted outside legal oversight. Grant blanched. That's internal business, not federal regulation. It becomes federal, the officer replied, when shareholders file complaints, or when personal misconduct intertwines with corporate misrepresentation. All of us, if you can in the Brofor, people said Domi 2-6. A gust of wind swept through the courtyard. Madeline tightened her coat around her, staying near the door where her babies slept inside with a hired nurse. Grant swiveled to her, eyes burning. You did this. You called them. Madeline shook her head gently. No, Grant. You did this to yourself. Actions have consequences. Her voice was soft, but it struck like a hammer. The officer stepped forward. Mr. Sullivan, we are placing you under temporary detainment for questioning. You may contact legal counsel. Grant staggered back as 2 officers moved to flank him. You can't. I have rights. I'm a CEO. You were, Daniel corrected quietly. As of last night, your board stripped you of executive authority. Grant's eyes darted frantically. No, they wouldn't. I built that company. They built it, Daniel said. You tarnished it. One of the officers produced cuffs. Grant panicked. Wait, I have a pregnant partner. Ava needs me. She's unstable. She might hurt herself. Eleanor stepped forward, arms crossed. Then perhaps you shouldn't have left her alone in that consultation room while your world burned. Grant's voice cracked. Madeline, please help me. You know I'm not a bad person. Madeline looked at him for a long moment. This was the man she once loved. The man she defended to her parents. The man she trusted with her future. But trust had an expiration date. I hope, she whispered, you learn who you really are. Grant's face crumpled, not from remorse, but from fear of losing everything. The officers moved in. Metal clicked. Grant Sullivan, the man who once strutted down Park Avenue believing he could bend the world to his image, was led toward the SUV with his hands restrained. But just before he was placed inside, he twisted his head toward Madeline. This isn't over, he snarled. Daniel stepped protectively between them. Yes, Grant, it is. The officers guided him into the vehicle. Snow fell heavier. The courtyard turned quiet. Inside the mansion, the babies stirred softly as the hired nurse rocked them near the fireplace. Warmth filled the air, gentle, safe, untouched by the chaos outside. Madeline stood at the threshold, watching the SUV roll down the driveway. Not triumph, not revenge. Just closure. Eleanor touched her arm. He can't hurt you anymore. Madeline nodded slowly. I know. Beaver him. And enivrum after his word. Daniel added quietly, now you can rebuild. She exhaled deeply, as if releasing years of weight she'd never put down. But as the SUV disappeared through the gates, a second car, a sleek black sedan, turned in. Daniel frowned. We're not expecting anyone. The sedan rolled to a stop. A man in a navy coat stepped out, holding an envelope. He wasn't corporate. He wasn't federal. He wasn't family. Madeline's heart skipped. The man lifted his gaze, scanning until he found her. Mrs. Carter? I'm here on behalf of your late parents' estate. There's something they left for you, something urgent. The man in the navy coat approached slowly across the snowy courtyard, his polished shoes leaving crisp footprints behind him. Madeline instinctively held the doorframe for support, still healing, still exhausted, but steady enough to face whatever this was. He bowed his head respectfully. My name is Charles Whitmore. I'm with Whitmore and Pierce, your parents' estate attorneys. It is ominous. Eleanor stiffened. I know that firm. They only handle high-level legacy cases. Charles nodded. Correct. And one of those legacies belongs to Mrs. Carter. Madeline's pulse quickened. My parents left something else? Something I didn't know about? He offered her the sealed envelope, thick, ivory paper, embossed with the Carter family crest, a symbol she hadn't seen since she was a teenager. This was to be delivered only after the birth of your first child, Charles said gently. And only once your parents' trustee, he glanced at Eleanor, confirmed your safety. Eleanor inhaled sharply. Your parents planned this far ahead? They planned for everything, Charles replied softly. They were careful people. Madeline took the envelope with trembling hands. Her chest tightened not from fear, but from the ache of missing them. Her parents had died years ago in an accident, and yet here they were, reaching out across time. Charles continued, There's also a second item locked in my car. I'll retrieve it once you've read the letter. Daniel stepped beside her. Do you want to sit? Madeline nodded. He guided her into the grand foyer, where warm light spilled across the hardwood floors and her babies slept peacefully in their bassinets. The mansion felt alive again, not with Grant's cold ambition, but with something gentler. An echo of family, of love. Madeline broke the seal. Her mother's handwriting swept across the page, elegant, graceful, familiar. My sweet girl, if you are reading this, you are a mother now. The words blurred instantly. Tears welled not from heartbreak, but from the overwhelming weight of love she could feel in each stroke of ink. We knew life would test you. We feared the wrong man might try to take what wasn't his to claim. So we built protections, not because we didn't trust you, but because we wanted your future children safe. Your heart is soft, Maddie. Too soft for men who mistake gentleness for weakness. Madeline pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. Eleanor looked away, blinking rapidly. Daniel swallowed hard. She read on. We left something for you. Something that will make rebuilding your life easier. Something that belonged to your grandparents, then to us. Something meant for you and your children, never for anyone who tries to stand on your shoulders. Use it well. Use it bravely. And know we love you, always." The final line broke her. "Your mother, Elizabeth Carter." Madeline folded the letter against her chest and sobbed quiet, trembling sobs she'd been holding back for days. Daniel knelt beside her, steady and patient. Eleanor placed a gentle hand on her back. When she finally inhaled again, Charles cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." He stepped back outside and returned, carrying a long, narrow case, heavy, beautiful, metallic edges polished to a shine. "This belonged to your father," he said. "He wanted you to have it when you became a parent." Madeline opened the case slowly. Inside lay a sleek Mont Blanc fountain pen, engraved with the Carter crest, and beneath it, a thin stack of documents. Daniel unfolded them carefully. His eyes widened. "Madeline," he whispered, "your parents, they left you a controlling share in the Whitford Carter land group." Eleanor gasped. "That's one of the largest private land holdings in the state." Eslo. Madeline stared at the papers, breathless. She had gone from abandoned to the most powerful version of herself she had ever imagined. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A text from an unknown number. "I know where Grant is, and you need to hear what he's planning." Madeline's heart dropped, because the message was signed with a single name, Ava. Madeline stared at the phone screen, its glow sharp against the dimmed foyer light. Ava's name felt like a shard of glass rolling across her palm, dangerous, unpredictable, but impossible to ignore. Daniel stepped closer. "What is it?" Madeline lifted the phone so he and Eleanor could see. "Ava. She says she knows where Grant is, and what he's planning." Eleanor's expression darkened. "That girl has caused enough damage. But she may also be the only one who can stop him," Madeline whispered. Charles Whitmore, still standing respectfully near the door, tilted his head. "Do you want security present while you respond?" Madeline shook her head. "I'll call her." She reached out for a reason. Her hands trembled not with fear, but with the weight of everything she'd become responsible for. She dialed. The phone rang once, twice, a rustling sound. Then Ava's voice came through, thin, shaky, terrified. "Madeline, are you alone?" "No," Madeline answered carefully. "But you're safe. Talk to me." A quiet sob crackled through the speaker. "I shouldn't be calling you. I know I shouldn't. But Grant, he's not thinking straight. He feels cornered." Eleanor scoffed. "Good." Ava swallowed audibly. "You don't understand. He's blaming you for everything, losing his job, the investigation, the board turning on him. He thinks you set him up." Madeline stiffened. "I didn't. He destroyed himself." "I know," Ava whispered, "but he doesn't see it that way. He said he had one move left." Daniel stepped closer. "Where is he?" Ava hesitated. "At his brother's lake house outside Terrytown." "But that's not the problem." "What is?" Madeline pressed. Ava inhaled shakily. "He took documents from his office before the board suspended him. Real ones. Files with signatures, transfers, projections, things that make him look innocent." Daniel's eye narrowed. "He's going to fabricate a defense." "No," Ava said brokenly. "He's going to frame someone." Silence fell. Even the babies seemed to sense the stillness. "Frame who?" Eleanor asked sharply. Ava's voice cracked. "You, Madeline. He's convinced the only way to save himself is to prove you orchestrated the investigation, that you leaked confidential documents, that you tried to sabotage his company out of revenge." Madeline felt her breath catch painfully. "That's insanity." "He's not rational," Ava whispered. "He's angry, desperate. He said he'd ruin you before you ruined him." End quote. Daniel's jaw clenched. "He's done enough." Ava's voice broke again. "That's why I'm calling. Because I realized something. He doesn't love me. He never did. He just used me. And when things went bad, he left me to handle everything alone." Madeline's tone softened. "Ava, I'm sorry." Ava sobbed harder. "I didn't want to hurt your babies. I really didn't. I was confused. Lost. I didn't know who to trust." Eleanor's voice cooled, but wasn't unkind. "You made dangerous choices. But calling us tonight, that matters." Ava sniffled. "I want to help you. I'll give you everything, my messages with him, the documents he made me sign, his plans. I can testify. Daniel straightened. That would dismantle his defense. Ava whispered, I know. Then her voice trembled with fear. But he's on the edge. And if he thinks you're coming after him, he'll do something reckless. Madeline's heart thudded. Ava, what did he say exactly? Ava lowered her voice to a terrified whisper. He said he's not losing everything, and if he has to destroy the Carter name to save himself. She choked on a breath. He will. Madeline felt cold wash over her. Daniel reached for her shoulder. We'll protect you, Ava whispered, one last sentence, one that froze everyone in the room. He said he's coming back to the mansion tonight. Madeline's breath stopped. Eleanor's eyes widened. Daniel immediately stepped toward the door. From the other end of the line, Ava's voice trembled. Madeline, lock every door. He's already on his way. Snow fell heavier as night settled around the Carter mansion. The long windows glowed warmly against the storm outside, but inside the great halls, tension pulsed like a second heartbeat. Daniel locked the final door while Eleanor contacted private security. Madeline stood in the foyer, her babies sleeping peacefully upstairs under a nanny's watch. Grant was coming, but this time, she wasn't the trembling woman in a hospital bed. She wasn't the wife begging for answers. She wasn't the woman holding back tears for a man who didn't deserve them. She was the Carter heiress. She was a mother. She was the one with everything to protect. The front gates creaked. A car engine roared, then slammed to a stop. Grant stumbled out of the driver's seat, coat flapping wildly in the freezing wind. Rage twisted his expression, the kind born from a lifetime of entitlement finally denied. He marched toward the front steps. Daniel stepped forward. That's far enough. Grant shoved him aside. I'm speaking to my wife. Madeline moved into view, calm as winter air. I'm not your wife anymore. He froze, thrown off balance by her steadiness. We're not done. Yes, she said softly, we are. T41, endofrescence. Grant pointed a trembling finger at her. You think this house, this legacy makes you better than me? No, Madeline replied, but it makes you irrelevant. Grant laughed, a broken, manic sound. I built everything. You were nothing without me. Eleanor stepped beside her, arms crossed. And yet, here you stand, yelling on property that never belonged to you, after being removed from the very company you claimed to build. Grant's breathing turned ragged. I know what you're doing, trying to take my kids from me. Madeline's voice remained calm. You abandoned them the minute they entered this world. Grant lunged, but Daniel intercepted, gripping his arm firmly. You lay one finger on her, and you'll see consequences far worse than suspension. Grant jerked free. You think the law is on your side? A new voice answered from the doorway. It is. Everyone turned. 2 uniformed officers and a legal marshal stood at the entrance. The marshal lifted a folder. Mr. Sullivan, we have a court order based on new testimony and evidence provided by Miss Ava Brooks. Grant's face went ashen. She confessed, the marshal continued, everything, including the forged documents, your attempt to tamper with secured hospital areas, and your intent to falsify corporate records. Grant shook his head frantically. She lied to save herself. Her statements are supported by timestamps, text messages, and internal logs. The marshal replied, Sir, you are being taken into custody pending further charges. Grant backed away, desperate, unhinged. Madeline, please, don't let them take me. Think of the babies. Madeline stepped forward. For the last time, she looked at the man she once thought she'd spend her life with. You should have thought of them, she whispered, before you betrayed them. Grant reached for her. But the officers were faster. They pulled him back, cuffed his wrists, and escorted him down the steps toward the waiting vehicle. Snow swirled around him, muffling his angry shouts until the car doors slammed shut. Silence settled. Real, peaceful silence. Daniel exhaled. It's over. Eleanor placed a hand on Madeline's shoulder. You protected your family. Your parents would be proud. Madeline's throat tightened. I hope so. Daniel looked at her gently. What happens now? Madeline lifted her gaze toward the grand staircase, where her 3 newborn sons slept safely in their nursery. Now, she said softly, I build a life they'll never have to recover from. She stepped into the warm light of the mansion, not as a woman surviving heartbreak, but as a woman stepping into her own legacy. Behind her, the great doors of the Carter estate closed with a quiet, final certainty. And for the first time in a long time, she was free. And just like that, our story comes to a close. You're still here with me, right? If you've made it all the way to this moment, then something in this journey touched your heart in a way only real stories can. And maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of something important about your own strength. Life will test us, sometimes with people we trusted, sometimes with storms we never saw coming. But as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Madeline's pain didn't end her, it shaped her. It brought her back to herself. And that's something each of us can carry. The truth that we are stronger than the moments that try to break us. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, healing, or even just a quiet moment of reflection, then don't leave silently. Show some love, hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs strength today, and subscribe so you won't miss the stories that remind us who we can become. You matter more than you think. And your story, just like Madeline's, is still being written.